Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Thursday, April 26th, 2018. Heartbreak from the penalty spot. The Champions League semifinal from yesterday, and of course Europa semifinal will be our topics today. But Duane, let's start with heartbreaks from the penalty spot. Of course, right? It was always going to end up at penalties, isn't it?
Well, it was always going to end up there, but certainly it was one of the things that I thought was maybe the more likely result that TFC would get through this. But when the penalties started, it became pretty clear that Chivas wasn't going to miss anything, and it didn't seem. I don't know whether it's still in effect from 2016, and sort of thinking about that still, but I just didn't have a lot of hope when they stepped up to those spots, because I don't know what it is with TFC and penalties. I don't think they've ever won a penalty shootout, including when they used to do those silly little Carlsbad Cup exhibition shootouts. They used to lose those too. So yeah, and they miss a lot of penalties just in the regular play too. So maybe they need to work on them. I don't want them to go to penalties.
Yeah, and of course we're not saying here that penalties is the fair way always to determine a champion, especially this way. If you're TFC, you have to be happy that there wasn't 250 minutes of extra time after the game because of depleted roster. And let's start there. When you saw the roster come out, by the way, for the listeners who weren't privy, didn't watch the game last night, it finished 2-1, 3-3 after both legs went to penalties, and straight to penalties, no extra time. Toronto's makeshift backline due to injury, and of course during the game as well, Josie Altidore re-aggravates what he felt last week. So you had a situation where your best penalty taker, Josie Altidore, or one of your most reliable one, wasn't there to take part, and you have a lot of injuries. How confident or non-confident were you when you saw the lineup come out?
The lineup didn't have a natural center back. Michael Bradley slotted back into the center back position. They started three other natural fullbacks back there. Now, they did okay, but I think, as you quite rightly point out, you look at the last 20 minutes of that game, and that team was gassed. If that goes into extra time, as most competitions would at that point, it's hard to see TFC doing anything but holding on for 30 more minutes. Now, they did have that Delgado chance late, but other than that, there was really not a lot going forward from about the 70th minute on, and it was all Chivas one-way traffic, and that was maybe the only time during the outside of the end of the Tigres game during the CCL run where Toronto looked outmatched, looked lost out there, and they were really holding on for the penalties at that point. But as you say, Josie's not really available to take a penalty in an effective way. Vasquez is a good penalty taker for them as well. He was off. It was a tough slug at the end there. And it's a hard way to lose, but, is it fair? Is it not fair? Well, they've been doing this forever. So at this point in time, it's fair because you know that that's what it's going to be. And it is a skill. It is not pure draw or pure luck, as some people like to point out. There is a skill to taking penalties. And, you got to work on them a little bit when you're in a championship tie sort of situation. And you would assume that they did, but,
Chivas did. Chivas, you mentioned Chivas was not going to miss any. The finish, the clinical finish, it's not just the penalties. Throughout the game, throughout the tie, we've seen the difference of finish, of clinical finish, of composure, I would say. Because just finish itself, at that level, professional player has a professional player. He has the skills to finish. It's just more about the composure, about the moment not getting to you. And when I've seen different players for Chivas score, even their first goal, like an opportunity, and he had one chance to score on net to put it past Bono, and it was just no need to hit the shot hard, no need to make it overcomplicated, just put the ball in the net, and that clinical finish, that little touch, the touch that's not made with power, not made just with precision. It's a mix of every little thing. It's almost a delicate touch on the ball to make it go into the net, and that touch, well, Chivas had it on the penalties. Chivas had it in the goals. And it's one of the big difference when you're looking at MLS versus Liga MX. But I don't like to use that expression because it's teams. It's not leagues. It's nothing to do with the leagues. those two teams, when you see them finish, hit the ball, just that small amount of technique that you see a difference. It was actually really jumping out from the screen to hit my face last night when I was looking at Chivas' player. The way they were not afraid to hit the ball, and the moment didn't get to them at that moment when the foot hit the ball, yeah?
No, they play a very good, very solid system, and then, as you say, they took their chances when they needed to. They played with confidence. They played like this was the only thing they had to play for this year, which it is. But when you look at their table situation right now, you mentioned the clinicalness of it. And you go back to leg one, which is really, combining the error on the second goal by Chivas and the fact that Toronto left a lot of chances go awry in that first leg. That's the difference between this. Woulda, coulda, shoulda on that stuff, but on the whole, I thought Chivas was the slightly better team in the tie, and they got the results they probably deserved. But that said, TFC managed to pull that out. Had Delgado gotten over the ball instead of under, and that would have been a very tough finish, by the way. A lot of people are saying it was a sitter. I don't call that a sitter, but certainly a chance. Had that gone in, or had the penalties gone a different way, then I don't think TFC would have been undeserving. But I do think on the whole, it is hard to argue that Chivas wasn't slightly better over the two games.
Yeah, and you mentioned the miss by Delgado, and I want to go there. Are those misses, and I'll include Osorio in the penalty shootout and Michael Bradley in the penalty shootout, maybe Bradley to a lesser extent, because we already heard him talk, and we have a few minutes of the press conference of his post-game comments we'll play in a few minutes. But for Osorio, for Delgado, and to an extent for Bradley, is there a danger of those misses lingering, affecting confidence over the next few weeks?
Osorio played so well in the tournament that I don't know necessarily whether hitting the eerie of the Moro's penalty miss to end the MLS Cup too. It hit the crossbar, right? So I don't quite know. He hit it well. He had the right idea. He just got under it a little bit and it hit the crossbar, and maybe he was being a little too cute. Bradley, I don't know what was going on with that, and he had to combine that with the terrible shot he took in 2016. And basically, I'm just, the next time TFC goes to penalties, God love you, Michael Bradley. They're not there without you, but maybe you take a sit back. It might not be your gig.
You called it. You called it about an hour before the penalty shootout. Like, yeah, loving this game, loving this TFC, loving the fire for Bradley. But if this goes to penalty, maybe you don't take any.
Yeah, well, it was a terrible penalty in 2016. It was a terrible penalty last night. There's no two ways about that. That doesn't, I've saw some American fans like to take the easy narrative on this after the fact. Non-TFC fans that were just watching this game from an MLS perspective were hitting or knocking Bradley. We're calling Bradley names or suggesting that he did. Somebody suggested he didn't try on the penalty. I don't know how one doesn't try on a penalty, but at any rate, if you watch this tournament as a whole, TFC isn't where they are without Michael Bradley. Michael Bradley is a key component to this team, and the fact that he in any way didn't showed a lack of effort, just I don't even know where you're getting that from, people out there. Michael Bradley was not the problem last night. He missed a penalty at the end, but Chivas was pretty clinical, and they were probably going to hit the next one anyway. Bono didn't even get near. I guess the first one he might have had a chance on, but other than that, those were well-taken penalties.
Oh, Bono, it was going to be my next thing, is Bono, how he reacted to penalties, and the moment, right? We talked about the moment. If you go back to before the penalty, when we see Bono step away from the referee conversation with the other keeper, walks towards his line, he takes about 3 deep breaths in and out, closes his eyes, trying to regain composure. I'm not sure he was able to. We won't know. But that moment explains a lot.
Yeah, penalties are such a crapshoot. You worry the keeper. I mean, you look at Chivas, the keeper didn't stop one, right? Crossbar. Field goal, that it's a crapshoot that way. I don't think any confidence is lost there. I mean, obviously he's probably going to beat himself over the error in the first game, and like to do that revisionary math and say had that not gone in, TFC wins the tie, which is technically true, but realistically not quite as simple as that. Bono played very well throughout the CCL run, made tremendous saves, particularly in the Club America game. So again, you can point to any scapegoat you want last night, and also then turn that around and go, well, but he did this earlier on in the tournament, so without him, they don't go there. The only thing that you would say with TFC at the end, they were running out of steam, and they're beat up, and maybe this depth that still is a difference between the Mexican and MLS teams was a little bit evident by the time you get to the very end of the competition, and you're running with the same guys, and you don't have the ability to sort of back them up in a true way, so that it caused some tired legs at the end there. That said, look, there was a lot of positives from this. And even last night, the first half was, once they fell behind that goal, they could have collapsed. They could have just said, oh, it's over now. But they kept their head down, got a goal back quick, and then Javenko's goal at the end there, sent it to where it was. And for 45 glorious minutes, TFC fans were one shot away, and they almost got it with the Delgado. But again, if you watch that, I want people that are saying that it was a sitter, again, go back and look at it. It's a bit behind him, and it's a bit bouncing. Had he been able to get a volley on that hit the goal, it would have been a world-class goal, and it would have been hilarious if a Chivas USA player won the game against Chivas Guadalajara. But it wasn't to be, and I don't know. There's nothing. It's hard if you're a TFC fan. If you're TFC, it's hard to take solace in the sort of moral victory of what they did over the past 2 months, but I think you have to take a step back at some point and go, yeah, that was a pretty good run, and they did take it better and further than any MLS team had gone before. Yes, I know 2 others have been in the finals, but I mean in terms of taking it to a shootout, that has not happened before. They do, if they get back again next year, I would give them every chance to take another deep run again, but it takes a lot of luck. It takes a good draw, takes form at the right time, luck at the right time to win a CCL, and TFC didn't quite have it at the end. Has Josie's health and Vasquez going out and maybe not being able to give the full 90 last night. There's a lot of factors in there, and in the end, Chivas with a slightly easier route to the final maybe helped them. The fact that they could focus entirely on it, and because their league season's over, maybe that helped them a little bit.
And
a lot of stuff going.
And their coach, they played well. Chivas played in a way that was effective against TFC. Was able to break down TFC when it was needed. When we have to give credit where credit is due. Out of the 3 Mexican teams that Toronto faced, Chivas on paper was the worst of the 3. But tactically, how they played the almost anti-tactic war with Greg Vanney, they won that. And they won the tie. And they won the tournament. I just want to go back to one thing where you mentioned the death of Toronto, and depth of Toronto. The last 2 months and a half have been insane. If you're looking at the amount of games played, the travel, add to this the injury, the short-term signing, the emergency signing to make sure you can field 18 players, and it has been a whirlwind for Toronto over the last 2 months and a half, 3 months, since mid-February, even before with the training camp. It has been a very difficult beginning of the season. Is there a danger that for the team itself now, that you see this run being over, and you have, let's face it, Vasquez was on an air cast last Tuesday. He cannot be 100%. We know he's not, and it's going to be a little while before he is. Josie Altador's hamstring might be shambled right now, and there's other injuries with the team. We're talking about Morrow, talking about Mavinga wasn't 100%, talking about a lot of other injuries. Is there danger that this let down, but more that the consequences of this run, which would be the injuries for me, affect the regular season now?
Well, yeah, there is, bluntly. I mean, and the fact that they played the 2 rotated squads and ended up 0-2 with a bad showing and beat both those games, right? They're 1-4 right now, and that's a hole that they're already in. I've done the math a couple times and put it out there that if TFC plays at the same pace they did last year for the rest of the way, they will end up with 61 points. That will be more than fine. That will be competitive to get into a bye spot. But the question you have to ask yourself is whether or not they're going to be able to turn it around and immediately start to play at that 2 point per game level that they need to get to there. The game on Saturday is going to be very difficult for them emotionally, physically. Injury-wise, I don't quite know what they're going to be able to do to put out there to be competitive, but they need the points. They need 3 points. They need to refocus quickly, and that's always going to be the difficult nature of this. Martin Bailey, our friend who serves us the stats all the time, said that the record of MLS teams following CCL play is ridiculously bad. So this game on Saturday is absolutely going to be very challenging. But as I said, look, in some ways, maybe they'll look at it, the players will look at it as an opportunity to just go on adrenaline and sort of put things behind them, have that focus so quickly that they have to turn around and get back on the pitch might be helpful to them, because if they dwelled on it for a week or something, that might have been something that caused the depression to kick in. But there's no room for for slowing down now. They have to start getting the points and climbing back up the table, because they do have a league, an MLS Cup championship to defend that they feel that they can, and obviously the Canadian Championship. They'll want to be informed for that, because they want to get back to this again. It's the injuries, and Josie, I've been joking, not joking for a while, that they'll probably sit him down for a month after the end of this, because he was running on fumes basically, and I don't know, duct tape on his hamstrings or something there. It's going to be a tough slug to get him back to full health. And the question now is whether it makes sense to shut him down completely for 6 weeks or something like that to get him back to full health for the end, or whether or not they need him. That's the question they have to answer themselves.
Yeah, no, it will be a question that we'll see answers on the pitch in a few days, but we'll see. Let's listen to Michael Bradley after yesterday's CONCACAF Champions League final.
You have an idea beforehand what you want to do. Obviously, you want to take it in an aggressive, confident way. He had gone down early the other way a bunch of times. We or even some of the scouting that we had done showed us that, and I wanted to push it high into that corner, and it wasn't to be.
Did it come to your mind at all about the 2016 shootout? Did you learn anything, not just you, but the team heading into tonight, about that shootout?
Like I said, in the biggest moments tonight, not just tonight, in the biggest moments, we threw caution to the wind and played with balls and bravery and pride in ourselves and each other and in our club and our city. And unfortunately, at the end, one team has to lose. That's when you compete at the highest level. That's how it goes.
How proud are you to be the captain of those players out there? You've obviously played a lot in Europe. You came back to play big games like this in MLS. Some of those players tonight played the biggest game of their careers. There was 4 Canadians on the field at the end. How proud are you to lead this group?
Very, very proud. We've played some of the biggest games in the history of this club, in the history of this league in the last few years. And when the lights have come on brightest, we've been a team in every sense of the word. We've been competitors, we've been winners, and like I said, unfortunately tonight, when it came down to it, a few things didn't go our way, but that doesn't change. That doesn't change what we're all about and what went into it.
Final one from me, Michael. You and Greg spoke so eloquently on Monday about the tragic events in Toronto this past week. Greg spoke again post-game about going out there and representing the city. Was that on your mind? And obviously was it a big part in obviously how proud you are in representing that club and the crest on your chest?
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke before the game about it as a group. Even driving to the game, we were all on Twitter, Instagram, seeing some of the images from Maple Leaf Square. Even in the rain, people out and weren't gonna be stopped. And so, when we had our chance, we tried to play and compete and represent them in a way that hopefully they could be proud of. We would have loved nothing more to be bringing home a trophy for them tomorrow. But listen, I'm absolutely convinced and sure that if we continue on this path, there's going to be more trophies.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Thanks to Michael Bradley for his post-game comments. Duane, how long before we see balls and bravery on a T-shirt?
Balls and bravery. Maybe that'll be a shirt to get till this weekend for sure. Balls and bravery.
Yeah. What do you think about his comments? He mentioned the last thing before we came back. He mentioned if we continue on this path, they will be back, no doubt. And if we go to Toronto's recent history, usually there's a heartbreak and a learning experience, and they come back and they achieve it. 2015, going to the playoff, get booted out of the playoff by Montreal, 3-0. 2016 playoff once again. Eastern Conference Final, beat Montreal, goes to MLS Cup, loses in penalties. 2017 TFC's goals back to the MLS Cup against the same demon that eliminated them, Seattle, and beats them for this time winning the trophy. In a year's time, are we going to be talking about how TFC overcame this loss and won outright the CCL?
Well, I mean, TFC proved that they can be competitive with the Mexican teams. They won only one game on the road, and they handled themselves at home with the exception of the Chivas game. But, by and large, they showed that they can be competitive with them. So if they get back to the CCL again, and let's keep in mind that it is the Voyageurs Cup that qualifies them for that, so they will need to get past Ottawa, or I suppose the other team that comes in, we suspect Ottawa.
Well, it's IS Blainville versus the Oakville Blue Devils, so I'm a bit conflicted there because I played for, I lived in both, played for one, so I'm like, do I cheer for Blainville or cheer for Oakville? I don't know, but anyways, the winner of that goes to play the Ottawa Fury, and the winner of that goes to play TFC.
Exactly, and then they'll play the winner of Vancouver versus Montreal in what will be the last Voyageurs Cup of this format. So, they need to get through that to get there, and anything can happen in a short little run. But they will put a lot of resources into that because they definitely want to get back to the CCL. What I do think that one thing that is for sure with the loss, when that last penalty soared over the goal last night, that's put any doubt, put to rest any doubt whether TFC is taking the CCL, or not the CCL, I was going to see the Canadian Championship, the Voyageurs Cup seriously this year. They want to get back to this competition to avenge themselves, and they've proven they can beat big teams in it. And if they will never get a worse draw in terms of the teams they had to go through to get to the final than they did this year. So if they get back in it, they could go back to a final again. They could. That said, they could be eliminated in the second round to a Mexican team if they draw the wrong one, right? So it's going to not be a sure thing, but I do think that they will be motivated to get back there. But at the same time, I do want to reiterate, there's a lot of people that are saying this is the most important game in TFC history, and I suppose you can make that argument, but I will maintain that the two MLS Cups do rank higher than that, because winning the league is the bigger deal in any given season in my mind, and they need to get back to that. And there's a lot to play for this year, and it will still end with confetti if they can get the job done in December again, and that's what they have to focus on before they worry about a CCL run again in 2019.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sorry, it's you. All right. It's hard when you're trying to talk and you have to sneeze at the same time. It's kind of hard, but I figured it out. Duane, when we're looking at too, the most important part usually in your season is your league. It's more difficult to win a league, even though there's a playoff aspect to Major League Soccer. Still difficult. It's still the result of a season, or at least the majority of a season, that gives you access to the playoffs, or a bye for the playoffs, or the momentum, the confidence. So the league is more important. But because of happenstance, because of history, because of habits too, the Champions League, because its teams were not used to, has a little something special, a little something like a little flair. But look, Major League Soccer has grown a long way, and before, when we used to see crowds of 45,000 people traveling to Mexico, we're like, oh wow, this is amazing. Last night, I'm like, seen this crowd before. Seen this type of crowd a lot of time before. I've seen it last week in regular play, league play. So, no, you're right. League is more important.
Yeah, and it starts right away on Saturday. And it's going to be hard emotionally for the fans, I suspect, to get up for it. But the team's got to take this. They've got to get points. They got to get rolling. They need to sort of rein it in a little bit there. I don't think the playoffs are any risk whatsoever, but if they do want to legitimately compete for that bye and avoid the play-in game, they really do need to get some points early. They can still, people are writing them out of the Shield, and it would take a very good close of the season. They would have to play slightly above their points per game from last year, probably to win the Shield, which would probably be about 63, 64 points. It's not impossible, but I think the people that are writing it off completely are missing the math. TFC's only played 5 games. There's still a lot of points on the board, so we'll see. But look,
And to finish, Duane, they're playing Vancouver, right? Friday. So turns out that it's a short week. You have to travel from Akron, from Guadalajara. Do you go back to Toronto, straight to Vancouver?
Chicago on Saturday, actually. Chicago on Saturday.
Oh, is it Chicago on Saturday? Okay. So Chicago on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, like you mentioned, injuries sometimes, what they say about soccer players, just like fighters, they heal faster than normal men. We'll see if players heal faster than normal men. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about Real Madrid.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
You like what we do? Patreon.com/Sports Podcast Network is where you can encourage us, is where you can pledge, take the deep pledge to support us, independent soccer journalism, and to make sure you get great content like the Tuesday All Dude Soccer Show, where you can get for $2 a month your exclusive Canadian Premier League content. I was not necessarily shocked with the result, Duane. It was a bit more difficult for Madrid. They had to come from behind, but still was able to pull off the victory yesterday.
On the road, 2-1, right? So, yeah. Look, Bayern Munich hadn't lost since, I think, November.
21 straight games victory at home for Bayern Munich at Allianz Arena.
Yeah, that ended with Real. Clearly, to me, look, I mean, we talked about Liverpool and how excited they were that yesterday, and certainly they look like they have one foot in the final. Real Madrid's favored to win this competition, no doubt. Like this is a special team that we're watching, especially in Champions League play, and Bayern Munich is probably the second most talented team in the world right now, or third. Because I'll put Barcelona in there 1-2 or 1A, 1B with Real Madrid, and they just. They got the job done on the road, and it wasn't. I think they're full measure for it too. And obviously, that high-end talent, the ability to get goals, high-skilled goals, is something that Real Madrid just has. That even if they're a little bit off, they have that such high skill that they can just boom, it's done like that, 1-2. And I'll tell you this: if it is Liverpool Real Madrid in the final, that could be 5-2 or something. That could be one crazy game to watch.
For who? For Madrid or for Liverpool? I know, I'm just kidding. It's just a question.
I think it would be Madrid would be your favorite. But yeah, I could see, because the way Liverpool opens itself up, but it also plays hyper offensively. I could see that being a very exciting Champions League final.
I could see Mo Salah score a couple against Madrid for sure, and this time he will celebrate.
Yeah. This is the key for Real Madrid if the finals against Liverpool is to not fall behind 3-0. Although that's more of a Milan thing. So yeah.
That's true. But when I was looking at this game yesterday, and you see like the Asensio game-winning goal, you see the reaction of Madrid players, and yes, we know it's one if not the biggest club in the world, Real Madrid. We know what they can do. We know what the expectations are on the players. You almost have to win every single time you play this beautiful game. But I'm still fascinated by reactions like Asensio when he scored. It's not his first goal that he scores. Okay, the importance of the goal in Champions League semifinal, and you score on the road against a top team in the world. But the reaction, the emotion, the joy, the elation, and maybe the release of pressure a bit, it's fascinating. There's nothing quite like sports to me, nothing quite like soccer, nothing quite like the moment where you scored in front of 70,000 people. And when we talked in the first segment about the penalty shootout last night, and I've read on social media, and this goes for everyone. It's easy to criticize, he has to kick the ball and put it in the net. There's only the keeper in front of him. Well, it's not about that. It's not about what you can do. It's not about what you can do, how many times you've practiced before. It's about how many eyes are looking at you at that moment, too. That amplifies every single thing. And when there's about 70,000 people, trust me, nothing's easy when there's 70,000 people looking at you. You would screw up bottling like a bottle of water trying to screw the cap on if there's 70,000 people looking at you. You're going to be shaken. You're going to be worried. You're going to drop it. You're going to be insecure. You're going to make a mess. Yeah, imagine trying to do something even more difficult now. So when I see players' reaction and goals like Asensio scored, those moments that players don't let get to them, I have to say I'm surprised and impressed.
Well, yeah, Real Madrid as a whole, you talk about pressure. They have pressure in training there, right? So those guys damn well better know how to play at the highest stage because they won't be at Real Madrid very long if they can't. Certainly, it's what sets this team apart right now, though, is their ability to come up in big games. And that goes right down to their, hero villain, depending on your perspective, best player, Ronaldo, who has proven over the past, 3-4 years now that, he is every bit 1A, 1B in terms of the world's best player and what he can do and what he can step up. And I'm one of those people that struggled with him a little bit early on when he was younger with whether or not I could stomach his sort of antics out there. But you just got to take a step back and marvel at just how much skill he has and how much of a joy it is to watch him at the peak of his powers right now, and how lucky we are basically to have two players that are going head to toe with each other that are in Messi and him that have such a great rivalry and such a great skill level that we're watching firsthand play out. This is truly, if they win 3 straight Champions Leagues, this is one of the history's great teams that we're watching right now if they win 3 straight, and they're very close to that.
It's funny, eh? We still talk about Pele like he was playing last year. And Duane, in 20 years now, I hope we still do podcasts 20 years from now. Or I hope we're paid to do podcasts 20 years. But, I hope we do podcasts in 20 years so we can ask ourselves and tell ourselves, like, Duane, remember? We saw Messi. We saw Ronaldo. Those names will be talked about forever. Pele is our grandfather's and our father's soccer superstar. We're still talking about him today. He's still revered and recognized all across the world. I can only imagine how we will talk to our kids about Messi, about Ronaldo, and about how those 2 aliens shadowed every other single professional player in the world when they were playing. And we're talking about great players here. We're talking about amazing players. But no one compares to Ronaldo or Messi. And yeah, it's a cliche now, but we are lucky to watch him play.
Yeah, and look, you don't have to on Team Ronaldo, Team Messi. No, I use team football really when you're talking about those 2 guys. And they, as we've said many times before, they kind of bring slightly different skills to the park. But just I can't pick between them. They really are. It's interesting how we can have debates about who's the 3rd best player in the world. That is something that some people will have every so often. It's a barstool debate, and it's a barstool debate because it's really no one's breaking through the top 2 for at least a few more years, and that's the reality of it. But that's a good thing, and we'll get to see maybe Ronaldo playing in another Champions League final in a couple weeks, and then at the World Cup. And if he can do anything with that Portugal team in the World Cup, then
if he wins the Champions League again, and then maybe brings Portugal to World Cup final, never mind winning, man, this would have been the best 4-year stretch for a soccer player ever. And Messi and Argentina, who? Exactly. Let's finish the show, Duane, with Europa League semifinals today. Both came at the same time, unfortunately. But you have Marseille, the Olympique de Marseille, at home versus Red Bull Leipzig. Was it Leipzig? No, it's a Salzburg. It's Salzburg.
Salzburg.
Yeah, it's Salzburg. It's hard to tell. It's same logo, so you need to really look finely at the S. But Red Bull Salzburg in Marseille, and the other one is at the Emirates, Arsenal versus Atleti. Arsenal. Is it the final before the final, or are we not giving enough credit to Marseille and Salzburg?
Well, Marseille's had a lot of investment, and Salzburg's a good story in the sense that they've basically had all their players taken away from them and sent to Leipzig, and then they end up going further than Leipzig in the Europa League. So it's kind of ironic that way. But certainly Marseille looks slightly favored in that one, and the other 2 teams are probably the heavyweights left in this. And with Atleti being the prohibitive favorite to win the tournament, they have been ever since they went down. I think because of their Champions League success, they had a bad spell at the wrong time in the Champions League. That's the only reason they're not deep in that competition again. And obviously this is a team that has had success in the Europa League before. But look, Arsenal will be playing with emotion. There's a lot of narrative in this game. It's Wenger's last stand. It's his last big games he will play, or won't play. That'd be something if he did. But his last games will manage.
I want to see that. Come on, making a return for his last match. Coming off the bench, literally off the bench. Arsene Wenger comes in. Oh no! Shatters his fibula. He'll never walk again.
Maybe not. And by the way, he said the other day, we keep saying he's retired. He is not retired. He made that clear the other day. He's going to manage somewhere.
Don't get me started with the rumors. Did you see the rumors? There's rumors now. I won't even name the source because it's not even worth it. But apparently he wants to come to Montreal to be Rémi Garde's boss as a technical director of philosophy of soccer. Yeah, that'll never happen. But never mind. I used to say that about Drogba, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. I'll say that. I suspect he'll end up in Ligue 1. Natural homecoming for him there, French.
You know, Unai Emery, I'm never really convinced with him. Maybe PSG is looking for a manager. And guess what? Arsene, come here.
Yeah, weird fit in terms of the transfer stuff, the way he's handled the transfer market in Arsenal, how he would deal with having billions of dollars in his hands. But he somehow spend value spendings anywhere for PSG. That'd be very interesting. No, I obviously, from a sentimental standpoint, pretty much, unless you're a Spurs fan, you're kind of, or an Athletic fan, you're probably cheering for Arsenal to get to the final, to give him a last day out, to have him end holding a trophy up in the air. He had the opportunity to do that with the FA Cup and chose not to, but nonetheless, it would be a nice storybook ending for him. The Europa League is not. It's a fun competition. It doesn't have the same prestige as other league trophies, but it does have something very valuable to Arsenal, and that is the Champions League spot. So that is something very much to play for. But as I said, Atleti is your favorite in this, I would have to say, just in their ability to grind teams into nothing. And Arsenal, I just think Atleti is a better team than Arsenal too. So we'll be watching with interest though, and Wenger, it's nice to see him getting his due now that he's stepped aside in time for the fans to not be screaming for his head and instead remembering the good times, as we said last Friday when we talked about him stepping down.
Yeah, and let's just, we learned more things since last week as well. Like we were talking about him stepping down. Well, he didn't choose the timing. Let's just put it this way. He was strongly suggested that, well, if you want to leave on your own, you better do it now, because you might not have a choice if you wait a few weeks.
Now, Arsenal looks at the World Cup and knowing that there's going to be a lot of managers that come under the market in that bubble after the World Cup. So it's a natural time for them to be looking for a bigger name. Obviously, Arsenal is going to be fascinating next year. That said, you look at the talent gap that they have and look at the way they played this year. It's not a one-year project. So I don't know what they'll do, whether they'll go long-term in their look or whether they'll look for a caretaker. And I think they'd be inclined to go caretaker to sort of put the pieces together before they put their long-term manager in. But certainly it will be one of the most interesting stories to follow in the offseason. And whether Wenger, I think Wenger should cross the divide and show up in Spurs colors. That'd be funny. Let's go full heel here.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't come to Chelsea, I'll be happy. Let's finish the show with this quick tidbit of news coming out of Sweden, coming from the Swedish Football Federation. I think that's what it's called. Probably not. But they said no. They said, nope. We know you want to come. You've talked about in the media how you want to come to play for us in the World Cup, Zlatan. But we don't need you. We're good. We're good without you.
It's not that Sweden isn't willing to look at MLS players either. They have an MLS player on the roster. It's them choosing to not throw a giant ball of chaos into the middle of their team who might have diminishing returns, as we talked about on yesterday's show. I believe we talked about how, or 2 days ago, we talked about Zlatan's sort of underlying performance numbers aren't particularly good right now. And if he's not getting shots, he's not really doing much. So, yeah, I think it's the right decision for Sweden to not have him interrupting things, interjecting things. They got to the World Cup with good team chemistry and playing good team soccer. Putting Zlatan into that would just throw everything into a frenzy at the last minute, and it's just not. He's not playing well enough for them to justify that.
We were fine in 2014 without him. With a World Cup with no Zlatan, of course, there was a World Cup with no Sweden. We're good with a World Cup with no Zlatan in 2018. I think you're right, and I think we're seeing the Zlatan effect with the Galaxy. We've talked about it this week, where, like, tactically speaking, it's a monkey in the wrench having a player like Zlatan coming into your team when you already established a few connections and chemistries. Now, same thing could be said for the national team, for Sweden. He wasn't part of the of the core of players qualifying Sweden for the World Cup. He's not part of the instincts of the tactical strategies. So putting him into the squad will just put some chaos, like you mentioned. Just puts another monkey in the wrench. No, we don't need no wrench. You stay home.
No, precisely. And yeah, look, he's already he was talking about how he wants to be an actor yesterday too. So it's already kind of starting. He's entertaining, I get that. And he does have some value on the field still in terms of his ability to create offense from nothing. But, I will be curious to see what Zlatan looks like for the LA Galaxy in September. I'll leave it at that, whether he's has the drive and focus to grind through the summer months of an MLS season. We'll see.
Yeah, and one thing, if you're new to Zlatan, never believe a word that's coming out of his mouth. Never. He's never really, off. He's always on. Do not trust anything coming out of the Z-Man's mouth because, well, you'll be disappointed.
Well, full credit to him in many, many ways. He is a very good player. But was he ever at the same level that his reputation, that his image truly would suggest? Was he ever the third best player in the world consistently? Was he really in that conversation, or was he he was always a very good player, very offensive player? But yeah, he's managed to create this brand that the only other player that's done it since is another former LA Galaxy, another former LA Galaxy, and David Beckham. So it's kind of fitting that they're both in the same club.
Him and Chuck Norris, how? Chuck Norris was never a good actor, was never made great movies, and there's a cult following that appeared out of nowhere because of people making jokes. And the same damn thing happened to Zlatan. How do you start that? How do we do that for us? I don't know. It's fascinating to me how marketing-wise, how just accepting what people start saying jokes about you, embracing it, and pushing it to another level, and becoming the third most famous soccer name in the entire world. Not because you're that good. You are that good. But, I'd put Eden Hazard in front of Ibra any day for talent. And right now, and there's other players like that, right?
Well, you put 100 players ahead of him right now. But
Mo Salah. He's probably ahead of Ronaldo and Messi this year.
Yeah, again, credit to him. Mourinho has a bit of this in him too. Mourinho obviously has backed it up with some results in the past, but his reputation is a character, is something that is valuable to him, and has maybe sort of survived some poor seasons that he's had managing it. And Zlatan's the same way. He is set for life because he is Zlatan. He is TM Zlatan. I suspect he'll probably end up doing some kind of TV promotional work when his career ends, and he'll be good at it. He'll be funny, and people will like him, and good for him, I suppose. You got to do what you got to work with what you've been given, and he had talent, and he used it to its absolute full extent. But to get back to the topic at hand, no to Sweden. He better show up in LA, or that Galaxy team is in deep trouble. Speaking of Kevin, just as a final thought, since this is a disappointing day for a lot of TFC fans, not to give a pep talk out there, but this was they won the game last night. First time in history that they've done that. Only, I believe, the third time or fourth time an MLS team has won a game in Mexico. They went to the CCL final for only the third time of an MLS team. This is a tremendous, amazing run that they've been on over the last 18 months. And yeah, they lost the skill competition at the end of the game. And it's a skill competition they need to get better at, because they lost another one of them at the end of 2016. But it takes nothing away from the run. And, now we move forward. This now seems like the end of last year, and it's time to move on and create new memories. But it was a hell of a run, and TFC deserves a big round of applause and a lot of credit for what they did over that period of time. There has not been an MLS team that has been as successful of them for that stretch. Regardless of what happens from here on out, they will always have that. So TFC, congratulations on doing yourself proud. I suppose on the league, doing the league proud, but I don't really necessarily believe in the MLS 4 stuff. But yeah, good run, and chin up, TFC fans. Remember, could you imagine being at this point where you're disappointed and losing the penalties in the CCL final back in 2013?
Are you jaded already? Are you that jaded that quickly? Jeez.
So, yeah, no, some are. You do see that out there nowadays, which is funny, but hey.
As always.
I was there with blank.
Yeah, you were there when they were shut, yeah. We could say that. Yeah, it's fine. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We will be back tomorrow with our weekend preview, taking a look at all the narratives heading into Week 9. Yes, Week 9 already of Major League Soccer. Duane, where has spring gone? Because, well, I didn't see it go.
It went with TFC's UCL dreams.
Yep, it went by really quickly. And as always, until tomorrow, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.